welcome back to my channel. Today we are making the Greta clutch by Teresa Lucio. I found this clutch yesterday and I was like, oh my god, it's so cute. I've done a few mods, so I have put the embroidery on the front and I changed the strap and I have put zipper tabs and I've put an internal pocket. But this panel is from the pattern and so is the whole bag. So if you'd like to see how I make it, stay tuned. So first off, I'm going to hoop. I've got a tearaway stabilizer. So I'm just going to hoop that up by itself. And then I'm going to grab a pen and a ruler. And I'm just going to mark the middle of my hoop. You don't have to do this if you've got the guide that you can line over it, but it is a much easier way to do it. So then I'm going to also mark the center of my outside panel. So the idea is that both of these are going to line up. So the way I'm going to help to make that stick is I actually use double-sided tape. So I'm just going to put a little piece at the top and the bottom. This will just hold it in place while it's stitching down. Peel the backing off both sides. Then I'm going to fold it in half so that I can see that line. I'm going to match up the two lines. So like so. Making sure that that's lined up at the top and the bottom, and then just finger press that down. So that's all ready to go into the machine. Alrighty, so my embroidery has finished stitching out, and then I've just gone through with a craft knife and cut a few jump stitches so that it's all beautiful and neat. I'm also doing zipper tabs, so I've cut 1 1/4 inch squares that are going to go on the end of here. And another add-on that I've done is I'm going to do an inside zipper pocket. So I need another zip for that as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is split my zip open and then put the zipper tab on my outside piece. And you just want to make sure you get it nice and even. Apparently mine is not playing ball. There we go. Perfect. So then I'm going to stitch. Oh, I think I want grey thread for this. Just going to switch my thread over to grey. I was going to do a funky maroon, but looking at it now, it's very monochrome, so I might stick with that plan. All my threads just live in a drawer. They're a bit messy, but they're conveniently right next to me, so I deal with it. One day I'm going to get a beautiful thread drawer for just there. Alright. So now that I've got the right coloured thread, I'm going to, so this is my top zipper, so it is 9 inches. I'm actually going to singe these ends so it doesn't have a meltdown at me and start fraying and getting in my way. And then I'm just going to fold this directly in half and stitch along the top with a 3 3/4 stitch length. Like so, and then I'm not going to take it out of the machine, I'm just going to put the other one on the end and do the same again to this end. Trim all that down, take the tails off and throw them in the bin. So that's your zipper now done. So now I want to jump to my accent pocket. So I'm going to top stitch along the top. Now when you were cutting these, you need to remember to mirror one, so you turn the pattern over. So I always cut from the back of the fabric, so you need to remember to flip the pattern when you stick it on the other one so that it's going to be mirrored. And then I'm just going to stitch down with a normal stitch length and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to back stitch at the start. I'm going to get to that point, and then I'm going to lift my foot and pivot so I get a nice straight angle. And then I'm just going to clip where that angle changes. I'm just going to put 3 little clips so that when I turn it over, it's going to do the angle and still be nice and crisp. Then back up to a 3 3/4 stitch length, so just longer. And then I'm going to top stitch that down. So I still want to back stitch at the start, a couple of stitches. Get to the point and then lift your foot and pivot so that again it's a nice crisp angle. So then we grab our back piece, line it up, and I'm actually going to baste around the edge. So just to make sure it doesn't move on me while I'm doing this, I'm just going to add a couple of clips on. And then leave my longest stitch length on. Puppy! My dog is talking in his sleep. Knuckles. Good boy. Alright, so I'm just doing about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, just to tack it all in place, so it doesn't move when I'm trying to stitch it later. Now that that's all stitched down, I'm going to go back to my angled point, and I'm going to use an air erasable texter and my ruler, which is here, and rule a line directly down. Now the reason I'm using the air erasable texter is because it will come off. You could also use chalk. I just won't see my chalk on this pale colour. So I'm going to start at the top of the line. I'm going to stick to my 3 3/4 stitch lengths and then just do a couple of stitches and back stitch to lock it in, and then stitch down the line I just made. Trim off my tails. And then with a cloth over the top, so I'm just going to use this, I'm just going to press it to make that pen mark disappear. There you go, you can barely tell it was ever there. So that's our outside pieces now done. So I'm going to switch to my lining. So I'm just going to grab one of the lining pieces and my zipper pocket that I've dropped on the floor. Always a fun one. Ugh. Okay. So I've ironed a crease at the top to iron it in half. And then I'm going to take my ruler and my pen, and I'm going to mark 1/2 inch from the fold and 3/4 of an inch in from each edge. So 3/4 from here in, and then 3/4 in, and I'm going to rule a line between those 2 points, and then go down 3/8 of an inch and rule a second line. So this is going to give us our zipper box. Oh, I've got fluff everywhere today. So my fabric's non-directional, so it didn't matter which side I put it on, but you always want this piece there to be the bottom. So I've drawn on this side, so this side would theoretically be upside down if it was a directional print. So then I'm just going to line my pocket up in the center, go back to a 2.5 stitch length, and then stitch around the box we just drew. Making sure that we back stitch, and then to pivot, you leave your needle down, lift up your foot, and then it'll twist without moving out of place. Stitch along. Pivot, up, keep the needle down, pivot, back along. I really need new snips. I'll do an order soon. Alright, so I'm going to fold it in half and snip in the center of the box. And then make sure your lining's out of the way so you don't chop it. And I'm going to cut all the way to the edge, except about 1/4 inch back. I'm going to triangle out the corners. 1 and 2. So now I've got a little triangle. So I can push all the lining piece through the bag and then go and iron those seam allowances down. Okay, that is now all ironed. So I'm going to take my zipper pull and my zip and just attach those. Like so. Now I want my zipper pull on the left, so I'm going to lay it down the way I want and then stick the fabric over the top. And with a 2.5 stitch length, I'm now just going to stitch all the way around the zipper, locking it in place. When I'm pivoting, I'm making sure my needle position is down. And when I get close to the zipper pull, I'm going to put my needle down, lift up my foot, and then just zip it open. Up and over the zip. Don't sew over your zip if you're using metal teeth. It will just break. You actually have to hand crank to make sure you get in between the teeth. So you can still use them, you just have to be gentle. I'm not gentle, so I don't use metal zippers. But I know that about myself, so it's fine. Alright, I'm just chopping off all those tails. So now I'm going to let the pocket piece fall down. I'm going to line it up along that bottom open edge and then stitch the sides shut. I imagine I'm going to run out of bobbin thread pretty soon. Now I want to make sure that that zipper pocket is open before I start stitching everything together. I'm just going to check my bobbin. I might get one more line. Maybe I won't risk it. That's alright. So I'm just going to wind another bobbin. I love this pattern because you can quite easily take it in so many different directions. So another one I might end up doing is instead of stitching down here to have it separated, it would be really cool to put a magnet under there so it just magnetically closes. There we go. So you could do a magnet. You could do this pocket on both sides. I could have done 2 different little embroideries here and here. That would be cute too. On the other side of the lining, you could do a little slip pocket or card slot pocket. World's your oyster, really. I like zipper pockets in all of my bags. Before I made bags, if it didn't have a zipper pocket, I didn't buy it. I just don't like everything floating around in my bag. Alright, just going to re-thread here. There we go. So I'm going to take, which side do I want everything? I think I want the slip side on this side. So I'm going to grab my slip pocket and I'm just going to make sure that my zipper pulls are going the same way. So closed is this end. So then I'm just going to grab some pins, or clips, sorry, not pins, and clip this along the edge. And I'm going to open my zip so that it's out of the way for most of this stitching. Like so. And then I'm going to put this one on top. So I've made a zipper sandwich. So lining facing up, zipper facing up, outside facing down. And I'm just going to stitch along the edge of the zipper. And then when I get to the zipper pull, I'm going to make sure my needle's down and then just zip it up past it so it doesn't get in my way. Then I'm going to pivot, turn my stitch length back up, fold over just the top layer onto the seam allowance that we've just created, and then top stitch. I always like my top stitch to be more decorative, which is why I crank it up. You can still do it at the 2.5 if you want to. I just think that looks nicer. And trim off your tails. And now we have one side of the bag done. So I'm going to grab my other lining, line this up in the center. So this time I'm going to close my zip most of the way so that it's at the end of my sewing. And then I'm going to grab my pocket panel, well not pocket panel, pocket outside panel, and then clip that into the clips. And then go back to 2.5 stitch length. And stitch along there, making sure that I back stitch at the start. Back stitch is very important. It locks your threads in so it's not going to come unraveled. So needles down because I'm near my zipper. I'm just going to zip that out of the way and continue on to the end. Put it back up to your decorative stitch length. Fold over just the top onto the stitch, and I'm doing about a 1/8 of an inch seam, and I'm always back stitching. Awesome. So I'm gonna just zip this about halfway open so that my zip is in the middle. And then I'm going to take the 2 outside pieces and line them up and pin them all together. I don't know why it makes me so happy to throw my clips everywhere. A little bit of chaos, I guess. So I've done the bottom. Now I'm going to come up to the top and line up my top edges that are all nice and top stitched. And then just pin the rest in the middle, as many clips as makes you happy. And I'm going to do the same to the other side. So I'm pushing the zipper tab so it's folded in half so that I can get my 2 sides close together. And then I'm just pinning down the edge. I'm going to do the same all the way around my lining piece, but you just want to make sure that you don't catch your pocket panel in the clips, because we don't want to stitch that in there. That will be disastrous and you'll have to unpick it. And I personally don't enjoy unpicking. It's not my thing. Lots of clips. You don't have to use this many clips. I'm being a little bit dramatic, but that's okay. So I'm also going to stitch it with my pocket panel to the top to make sure that I don't accidentally catch it in any of my seams. So I'm at a 2.5 stitch length. I'm going to start I'm not going to start directly in the corner because I don't like to do that. So I'm going to start just, I don't know, about 1.5 inches in, back stitch, and then stitch all the way around. So you should be able to do this in one big rectangle. Now when you get up to your zipper tabs, it may get a little bit thicker because there's obviously a whole lot more going on there. Slow and steady wins the race. Clip so all the way along the bottom. You want to also make sure that you're not pulling the top layer of vinyl. You don't want it to stretch out of shape. In the corner. All stitched. Take your scissors and I'm just going to trim down the seam allowance at the corners so that they're going to come out at a nicer point. So you don't just cut at a 45-degree angle because they still won't sit nice. You want to get nice and close in and then veer out. So I'm going to do the same to my lining because I want those to sit nicely as well. Throw that in the bin. And then I'm going to go through my pocket and grab a corner. So I always grab it a little bit like a sock puppet because it gives me something better to grip on. And then we're just going to turn the bag out. So I'm going to poke it all the way out. To help me poke my corners, I use this. So this is a wooden flute cleaner, actually, because I play the flute. So you can just push it in, but because it's got gentle edges, it's not going to do anything too dramatic and like bust through the seam like if you use scissors, because I have done that before. It just helps push all the vinyl. You also want to make sure that your zipper tabs were not stitched and you have to pull them out because they might get a bit stuck with how close you stitch to them. So you just poke those out. Come on. This one doesn't want to come out. How rude. There we go. Then I'm going to pull my lining and just use my fingers to fold under that raw edge and then stitch that down. I'm also going to put a bag tag in here. So I buy mine in rolls and then I cut them and iron them in half so that they're easier to work with. So you just want to do a couple of stitches and then back stitch because we always back stitch. I'm going to get to roughly the middle and then slot my raw edge of my tag in there, stitch it down. And then that's the bag done. Just tuck that in, zip that up, tuck the rest of the bag in, and zip that up. So there's the clutch. You could just leave it there if you want to, but the pattern calls for a tab. So I'm going to make, obviously, a different tab. You saw it at the start of this video. So I've just cut two 1-inch strips, so 1 inch thick by 14 inches long. And I'm going to stick a piece of double-sided tape down the center. Like so. And then to the one I didn't put the double-sided tape on, I'm going to round this corner. So you want to get something that's going to be rounded. So that's probably not rounded enough for me, and that's not wide enough. So I am going to use, what's in between those? What have I got? The end of my cone is also not round enough. What about the other end? Oh, look at that, perfect. So I'm just going to trace the end of my cone to get some nice rounded tips. It's pretty much the name of the game here. And then I'm going to trim off that roundedness, and that's going to leave me with a beautiful end. A protractor would also work, but I'm not that skilled. I just like to trace things. Okay, so now I'm going to stick the cut one to the uncut one, lining up the tip with the tip. And then I'm just going to trim down the second one so that it's identical. Because that's the name of the game. Awesome. So now I'm going to top stitch this. So I want to go back up to a 3 3/4 stitch length. Actually, I might go all the way up to 4 just to be different. I'm going to start on a straight bit. I'm going to do 3 holes and then go back through the first hole I created to lock the stitches in. And I'm using a 1/8 seam allowance, and I'm going to stitch all the way around the edge. When you get close to the end, you want to go nice and slowly because you have just created an epic curve. Down the other side. And then lock those stitches in. Beautiful. We're going to grab our 1-inch swivel tab. And then the end that we started and stopped in, we're actually going to tuck up under there so that we don't see it. So I folded the good end, I've put through there and then folded it over, and I'm going to hide the bad end, for lack of a better word. It's not so much that it's bad, it's just where the start and stop is. And so I've made like a triple sandwich. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I didn't want to use any fabric in my handle, and if I had have double folded it, it would be too thick for the rivets that I've got on hand. So I'm just going to chop through all those layers, grab myself a rivet. I didn't grab any, of course I didn't. Here we go. Grab myself a rivet post, push the post through. Push the cap on, and then squish it down with your press, whether you have a big one or a little one, or you've got like the hammer job, and there's your wristlet strap. So then that will just attach for me to my zipper. There you go. Really cute little bag. I love this size. I think it'll come out really cool. You could also use a waterproof lining on the inside. That'd be cool too. But yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and stay tuned for many more.